What is up, Divergent friends? Welcome to another episode of Cognitive Dissonance with your host, Loyal to the Foil, the channel where we look at the insanity around us. Man, we have some crazy things to talk about today. But before we get into that, please remember you can follow me on Twitter at FoilThe. You can also find me on DLive and Parlor. I've got all the links on my YouTube banner. I finally got monetized here. So if you catch this live, feel free to super chat, or you can donate to the stream directly at loyaltothefoil.com. A little bit goes a long way. This stuff takes up a lot of work and a lot of time. So if you like my content, feel free to help out. And if you haven't checked out my other show, Space Force News Live on 1 Foot in 5D on YouTube with Alara of Sirius, do that. We have tons of fun there. So you should definitely check that out as well. So, man, a lot of stuff to cover today. I'm sure you guys all saw Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's very controversial little speech he gave the other day. He said all of the buzzwords, man, all of the buzzwords. And if you haven't seen it, I'm going to play it for you now.
Building back better means getting support to the most vulnerable while maintaining our momentum on reaching the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs. Canada is here to listen and to help. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
Oh, dear God. Woo, buddy. Build back better? Where have we heard that? An opportunity? So the pandemic is an opportunity to reimagine and to reinvest in our attainment of the 2030 agenda goals. Yeah, no. I'm not buying that. Man. So you've probably seen that clip online and he has been attacked every which way to Sunday. But he's getting this information from not just the UN, but the World Economic Forum. And if you've been following me and you've been watching my other videos, I've talked about Archbishop Vigano's letters that he wrote to President Trump. We've gone over how he has been warning about this reset that they're pushing, and he's this their spokesman for the most part. Their poster boy at the World Economic Forum is this guy, Klaus Schwab. And you may have caught some videos. I've seen a lot of content come out about him recently on the different speeches and talks he's given. The man wrote a book. And without saying too much, I remember another man that wrote a book, wrote out a whole plan. In fact, I mean, the book, when it's translated, was literally called My Plan. And he envisioned a whole new world order. That shit didn't end so well. Klaus is not only talking about, reset in society or reset economically. I mean, he's dropping clues to some other things. Now, before I get into the book that this man wrote, because that is the purpose of this video, I'm going to go through the book that he wrote. And, I read so you don't have to. I'm going to break it down for you. I thought I was going to be able to maybe get it all into one video, but when I really got into it, I was so mad. I was so mad. I started writing shit down. When I start taking notes, there's a problem. Normally everything is off the cuff with me, but this deserves to be looked into. Not only is he talking about the effects of, the current pandemic situation, but he's dropping hints on other issues. And I found a quick clip I want you guys to hear. This is the guy. This is the guy, Air Klaus, Schwab, right? Listen to what he's talking about now, because we're going past just what's going on with the pandemic now.
We all know, but still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole. The COVID-19 crisis.
I'm sorry, but this dude's voice just gives me the creeps.
Would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison to a major cyber attack. To use the COVID-19 crisis as a timely opportunity to reflect on the lessons the cybersecurity community can draw and improve our preparedness for a potential cyber pandemic. We all know
Cyber pandemic, right? So they're not happy to stop with the recent craziness. Now we've got to worry about uh, some horrific cyber attack that's just going to shut everything down as we know it, right? Just put a little more of that fear out there, guy. Just good going. So, like I said, this dude wrote a book, right? That 19, The Great Reset, authored by Klaus Schwab and Thierry Mallory, right? The primary author, as I understand it, is Klaus, Air Klaus. And man, he goes into a lot here. And I want to kind of go a little bit deep on this. I want to give you guys some information, and I will post the link in the description below if you want to go read this for yourself. It's only about 200 pages, but man, does this guy got a lot to say. So he breaks this down, right? He breaks this down into ideas on a macro reset, ideas on a micro reset, and then ideas on an individual reset. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through bit by bit and show you what he had to say. Like I said, I thought I was going to be able to get it all in one video. That ain't happening. So I'm going to focus primarily on the economic issues that he addresses in his macro reset section of this book. Um, Now, mind you, the entire premise for this is that all risk, that we are so interconnected now as a society, that all risk in any place affects the risk factors in every other place. Okay. He says that, a lot of us are pondering when things will go back to normal. The response is never. Literally. I mean, that's what the guy wrote. He literally said never. It's never going to be normal. And you can see this agenda being pushed by our world leaders. Uh, this feels like one of those things that, when they write it down, they put all this, they try to really church it up, you know? They try to really church it up. They church up the language. They try to make it sound, like they're out here to help. What I'm going to say is this. The people that are coming up with these ideas, they're billionaires, millionaires. These are the titans of industry, right? I will be willing to listen when they start really giving their money away. If they really believe that we can live better with less, that we can do better as a society if we have less and own less and affect less things on the earth, stand up and do it then. Go ahead, Bill Gates. Go ahead, Klaus. You know, give your money away. Give it away. Not don't do the philanthropy thing where you give it away for tax breaks and whatnot. I mean, really give it away. I promise I will listen then. But in any case, I digress. So he admits that things are not going to go back to normal. I mean, this is their plan, right? And he argues that all risk, individual or otherwise, is now connected to everything else, right? That our society is so interconnected that, and as you can see in the little nifty diagram that they've presented, that with this level of interconnectedness, we have the real potential for, a cascade failure, dominoes, right? Um, I like what they got, see what they put right in the middle there, climate action failure, extreme weather. They have this all on here, right? But you can see how they've made the schematic, where now we are so interconnected as a society that anything, it's the butterfly effect. Anything, it's a non-linear way of thinking, but something on the other side of the world can, you know, bring a cascade failure everywhere else. And to an extent, that's true. To an extent, that's true. What baffles me is that if he is making the argument that this extreme interconnectedness exposes us all to risk everywhere else, how is the answer more interconnectedness? How is the answer, more integration of governments, less individuality, less individualization of policies, be it in the United States or in China or in freaking Tahiti, whatever? If you're arguing that these problems, that the potential for risk and cascade failure becomes greater with more interconnectedness, should we not then be trying to preserve some element of individuality and disconnectedness then? How is the answer more government or more connectedness or uh more exposure? That makes no freaking sense to me. But somehow that's the answer that these guys come to. And they admit, that this level of interconnectedness has created an attitude of massive impatience, on everybody's account, because we have way more info, but we have less time to react to situations. We have less time to make decisions, and that people now expect to see immediate improvement when a decision is made. Now, I blame the media for a large part of this. They have not just the media either. I mean, in general, the ephemeral they have created a situation where the average person has the attention span of a freaking goldfish, right? It's an instant gratification society. Of course, they want to see things happen right away. You know, they've killed patience. They've killed patience, and that's on so many levels. But this is just baffling to me. I mean, the pandemic is clearly a complex system, right? There are many factors that are going to affect many other things that are going to lead to different decisions that are going to, branch out and affect everything else. Like, I get that. I get that. So it would seem to me that maybe this isn't an opportunity to push more tie to the system. It's crazy. And let me show you something else. This guy, this guy thinks that this pandemic is going to necessitate a global surveillance system, as if we don't have that already, right? Let me just tell you what he says. Just to provide a broad and oversimplified example. The containment of the coronavirus pandemic will necessitate a global surveillance network capable of identifying new outbreaks as soon as they arrive, laboratories in multiple locations around the world that can rapidly analyze new viral strains and develop effective treatments, large IT infrastructures so that communities can prepare and react effectively, appropriate and coordinated policy mechanisms to efficiently implement the decisions once they are made, and so on. So, as if the global surveillance structure isn't already bad enough. And like we said, the more connected, the more risk, right? So their answer is just to connect everything. And that only works, right? That only will work in their worldview if there is a more centralized control structure to make these decisions for disparate places. Now, if you follow me, you know I've said this before. There's a reason that we don't have people in Venezuela making decisions for the people that live in America. There's a reason that somebody in Abu Dhabi is not making decisions for people that live in New York. Each area, each area requires a local representation that understands the unique niche of the society there, their cultural needs, their collective history, uh, the needs of the people in an area. If you if you try to centralize all that, we end up with a global governing megastructure that, I mean, it's the new world order, people. It's the NWO. And it's crazy because the founders of this country made it a point to guarantee states' rights and kind of like try to limit the role of the federal government, which, incrementally, time after time, has just become this expansive, uh, this expansive monolithic structure that now we're so tied to. It almost seems it almost seems impossible to see a way out. More social welfare state, more federalized control of, you know, disparate areas in the country. Just more. That's the only answer they ever come up with, more, because the thing is, once somebody takes power, they don't give that shit back, right? Nobody gives back control. They just take more. It's nuts. It's nuts. So he goes into, they go into their theories on how that 19 has affected, the economies of the world, and what kind of reset we're going to need to be looking at to effectively manage where we're at now. And it's crazy because one of the first examples that he cites, because one of his premises is that there are a great many global restructurings that occur after, uh, you know, pandemic catastrophes. And of course, they reference the bubonic plague a great deal in here, which is crazy considering that the bubonic plague had like a death rate of like 50 to 70%, untreated. Not that they had a lot of viable treatments at the time, but granted, that's nuts. I mean, that would hold true for an untreated person today, even with all the antibiotics and whatnot that we're given. So he references Daniel Defoe, and he had kept a journal in 1665, a journal of the plague year. It wasn't published until 1722, but he says, Defoe writes, all trades being stopped, employment ceased, the labor, and by that the bread of the poor were cut off. And at first, indeed, the cries of the poor were most lamentable to hear, thousands of them, having stayed in London till nothing but desperation sent them away. Death overtook them on the road, and they served for no better than the messengers of death. And Defoe's book, he says, is full of anecdotes that resonate with today's situation, but that's kind of a false comparison. And I feel like it's a bit of fear mongering, considering we have viable therapeutics. We've seen Pfizer and Moderna come out with, allegedly vaccines with high efficacy rates, between 90 and 95% between the two. Um, you know, the the people that got the plague, they thought it was from like nauseous, vapors and such. Like, we understand a bit more. We understand a bit more now. So I mean, this just feels like a false comparison to me. But hey, it's his book. So uh, so he uses Defoe's Journal of a Plague Year as a comparison, and mind you, a quarter of the population died at various times because of the plague. Like this, it's like apples and oranges here, people. But okay. He then predicts that there are three potential scenarios for the way that this pandemic is going to run its course, right? In the first scenario, and he also says that all the good scientists agree on this. All the actual scientists, as opposed to those other scientists that you know whatever. But in any case, the first scenario, there would be an initial wave that started around March of 2020, that was followed by a series of smaller waves that occurred through mid 2020, and then over a 1 to 2 year period, it would gradually diminish, kind of like peaks and valleys. Now, we didn't really see that play out. We didn't see that play out, right? The second scenario, which this feels right to me. The second scenario, the first wave is followed by a larger wave that takes place in the third or fourth quarter of 2020, and one or several smaller subsequent waves in 2021. Compares it to the Spanish flu, right? That scenario would require the reimplementation of mitigation measures around the fourth quarter of 2020 to contain the spread of the infection and to prevent healthcare systems from being overwhelmed. That's what we're seeing happening now, right? And I am not speaking as to whether or not this is really happening. If you follow me, you already know my opinions on that. I am just telling you what this man wrote and what the media is pushing. That's all. That's all. So feel free to not, harangue me in the comments over it. Thanks. So that's kind of where we're at now. We're seeing the reimplementation of the lockdowns. We're seeing, um, you know, numbers that they're giving us that would correlate with this kind of an expansive, you know, boom in cases and, you know, allegedly deaths. Um, and the third potential scenario would be what they call the slow burn scenario, where, uh, and this is something that apparently does not usually happen with like influenza, but that they think could be potentially an option for that 19. But it would be kind of like a slow burn of ongoing transmission and case occurrence, that would just follow the first wave without any kind of real wave pattern, just smaller ups and downs. Um, and it would all be dependent, the success or failure of whatever measures would be dependent on the mitigation procedures, the lockdowns, the mask mandates and such. Um, he argues that any kind of sustained economic improvement, right, is absolutely going to be dependent on the restoration of consumer confidence that that this is all behind us. That people are not going to go out and shop, um, unless they believe that this is all behind us. And I don't think that's what we saw here, not in the United States in any case. We've seen the debates between those that are pushing the lockdown, versus those that are pushing, you know, kind of a temperate approach, a measurable, like, they'll decide what to do depending on what's happening in the area instead of just like blanket lockdowns and mandates and such. Uh, but it's crazy because they claim that, using Prez for example, that him reopening, that the economic boom that we saw when this stuff stopped was just a false, it was a false thing, and it was only relative to the amount that we had lost, that we didn't really gain like that. that the gains were being measured according to what we had lost. We were coming out of a, essentially coming out of a deficit and not really breaking even. But I don't think that's what we saw at all. I think people were ready to go, and I think that they knew that this wasn't going to be the end of it. A lot of people thought with the with November 3rd that would be the end of it. No, I'm still saying it doesn't matter what happens. They're going to push this because their goal, in my opinion, allegedly, oh, algorithm lords, this is just me talking here. Uh, Trudeau said it. Their goal isn't management of this crisis. Their goal is to change everything that we know, to use this as an opportunity to, be happier with less. For us to be happier with less, not for them to be happier with less, because God knows that's not going to happen, right? And he makes the argument that there's an inherent fallacy in the idea of, sacrificing a few lives to save growth, right? Um, I'm with Prez. Your solution can't be worse than the problem, right? They take the complete opposite approach to this here. I mean, he says that, as far as consumer demand, again, like I said, because consumer sentiments are what really drive economies, a return to any kind of normal will only happen when and not before confidence returns. That individuals' perceptions of safety drive consumer and business decisions. And I'm not saying that that's not true. That consumer confidence is not the real, not one of the real drivers of what we see economically. What I am saying is that I think the media pushes a message to attack confidence, to limit economic regrowth, and that maybe, and this is just my opinion, tech overlords, maybe they're doing that for personal or political reasons. I don't know. I'm just saying, right? I'm just saying. Uh, what else did I find in here that I thought was interesting? So this was pretty interesting. So he compares the U.S. government response to the response in Europe, right? And he's right when he said it was fundamentally different, but it's funny. It's kind of funny. Um, in the U.S., they gave income support for those that lost their jobs, right? Unemployment. And what happened was, in a lot of cases, people were better off. They were making more money on unemployment than they were making working. We know that. We saw it happen, right? Whereas in Europe, they gave the the support to the businesses that would keep workers formally employed, whether or not they were working, and replace, between 60 and 80% of their earnings, but yet kept them on the payroll. So they didn't see that great surge in unemployment. You didn't see people being disincentivized to go back to work because they weren't making more than what they were, they weren't making more by not working than what they were making working, which is what we saw here. And it's funny because the Democrats push this unemployment, 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 unemployment. We need to give, you know, all this free stuff. Nothing's free, people. This shit is not going to be free, but they want to give, this unemployment boost. And I'm not saying don't help out some, but you can't make it to where people don't want to go to work. But of course, that's all part of the plan, right? Universal basic income. We want you to stay home. We want you to stay home. Don't worry, we got you. We got you. Let's just have everybody, right? Bow down to the state. Let's just have everybody. Let's disincentivize creativity or innovation or whatever. Let's disincentivize those people that do have the umph to get up and go do something because it pays you more to stay at home. That just gives them control. Like the people that don't understand that when you, and I know this from personal experience, when you take government help, you're then bound by the government's definition of not only what is that help going to be, but what you can and cannot do while you're getting that help. You know, In Europe, they protected those people's jobs. They protected their paychecks. It sounds a lot like something Prez did, does it not? I mean, there was the argument between funding the Paycheck Protection Program or giving this giant influx to unemployment. And not like Prez didn't back up unemployment. I mean, for God's sakes, he went into the FEMA funds to help out the people, and God bless him for it. But there was a fundamental difference between the way the US approached the situation and because of this climate they've bred, this social justice activism stuff that they pushed. Uh, and the approach that Europe took was to protect not only the companies but the employees of the companies, so that when things were able to kind of open back up, people knew where they were going. They knew what they were going to do. They knew. It was fundamentally different. Um, all of that leads him to this. And this is where I'm going to leave off with this today, and I will pick back up, maybe tomorrow or the next day with his ideas on the societal reset. And I'm going to go through his ideas on tech, his ideas on society. I'm going to go through his ideas on, the individual, the environmental, all of it. I'm going to go through all of it. I'm just going to have to break it down. So he goes through all of these economic claims to arrive at the idea for something they're calling degrowth, right? Traditionally, we have been judging our economic strength and expansion, whatever, based on things like GDP, which he argues is outdated and not truly reflective of the potential that's there. And then he pushes this idea for degrowth, which some have called degrowth a movement that embraces zero or even negative GDP growth. And he says it's gaining some traction, in the richest countries. Yeah, Canada, the United States, we see how that's going. As the critique of economic growth moves to center stage, consumerism's financial and cultural dominance in public and private life will be overhauled. This is made obvious in the consumer driven degrowth activism in some niche segments, like advocating for less meat or fewer flights, by triggering a period of enforced degrowth. The pandemic has spurred renewed interest in this movement that wants to reverse the pace of economic growth, leading more than 1,100 experts from around the world to release a manifesto, because those are always great, in May of 2020, putting forward a degrowth strategy to tackle the economic and human crises caused by COVID-19. Their open letter calls for the adoption of a democratically planned yet adaptive, sustainable, and equitable downscaling of the economy, leading to a future where we can live better with less. And that's their thing, right? Build back better. Build back better. Use less resources. Agenda 2030, yo. If you were paying any attention, they had a commercial on the World Economic Forum, I guess Twitter site, that was a guy, and I talked about it in my last video. It was a guy like, oh, it's 2030, I own nothing and I've never been happier. They pulled the commercial down. After all of this has been kind of a media hubbub lately, they pulled the freaking commercial down. But don't think that just because they pulled that nonsense down that any of their ideas have changed. He's saying it. Planned yet adaptive, sustainable, and equitable downscaling of the economy, leading to a future where we can live better with less. Who lives better with less? Cuddy, not Klaus. Not Klaus. You, me, right? Why do I need a car when I can call an Uber? You know. And then they'll just have, and then these cars that you call, there'll be places that they just won't go, right? What do you need a house? What do you need a house? What do you want to take care of the upkeep? You can just, you can timeshare. You don't have to be stuck in one place, right? What do you want to live out in the country for? We need to protect those lands. We're going to put you all in the city. We're going to put you all in the city, you know? It's 2030 rebranded, man. It's 2021 rebranded as 2030, rebranded as this nonsense reset that they can stick where the sun don't shine. I'm going to be back with more on this. I'm going to put the link in the description below. I hope that this gave you guys some good information. I know it's only part of the plan, but I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. Um, Please follow me on Twitter. Again, you can check me. I even started putting my videos up on BitChute for whatever good that'll do. I don't know. I don't really. I might be putting stuff up on Rumble as well. I've had like 50 people tell me to go over there. But you can support the stream, loyaltothefoil.com. If you like my content, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend so I can get this info out to more of these sleeping masses. God knows they need it. Uh, Check me out on Twitter. Drop me a line in the comments and stay loyal.